Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for a link to my Amazon store where I've compiled some of the very best items available, including some of my own personal recommendations. Thanks! What's going on, YouTube? Middle Complex here, and today I've got a very exciting, very interesting knife review to share with you guys. This is the TAD or Triple Aught Design Dauntless. As far as I can tell, an MK3. There's actually 4 generations of this. They are currently on MK4. There is, oh my gosh, this is such an interesting knife. And just so you guys know, this is a knife that shaped my, my thoughts on design and aesthetics. This was a huge influencer on what I look for in a knife. And funny enough, I've never handled it. I just, I chased it and chased it and chased it for years, and could never really get my hands on one, or was never there, ready to buy as soon as one became available on the secondary market, because, man, getting a hold of these things is a huge problem. But in any case, I finally had an opportunity to handle it, play with it, look it over, and I've got everything together and can give you guys a presentation. And the person who made that possible was at BenJLion24 on Instagram. Thank you so much for sending this along. Give him a follow. It's because of people like him that I'm able to bring you guys this type of content daily. It's also because of my generous patrons. Thank you so much to the people who are supporting me right now. If you'd like to check out my Patreon, get your hands on some of those stickers, there's a link down in the description. You can check it out, and there's also some other exclusive benefits. The support would mean the world to me. Anyways, let's get through the stats here, or the specs. Overall length coming in right at my preferable overall length. It's about 8.1 inches overall. I have measured this at different lengths many times. Actually, during a live stream, I said it was shorter than that. It's not. This is definitely at least 8 inches. Blade length is coming in at 3.5 inches. And then your cutting edge is coming in just shy of 3. It's about 2.8, 2.85. There is a large, generous forward choil here, which is something that I will always take on a knife. Something I absolutely love. We're going to talk about that. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall. You can see there it's a little shorter than the Rat 1. How about up against the Spyderco PM2, which is over here? The Spyderco PM2 is coming in at 8.3 inches overall, a little bit shorter there. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue is also coming in at 8 inches overall. Super comparable there in handle and blade length. Cutting edge is a little different. Last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3. Para 3 is coming in at 7.25 inches overall. How's the action on this guy? This knife is running on phosphor bronze, and the action is nice and smooth. It's somewhere between, it feels very much like a Les George mid-tech. Anybody who's handled the Talos or the VECP, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not like, smooth like bearings, but it's also not the hydraulic feeling of a Sebenza. It's somewhere in between there. For a tool, this honestly is about the action that I prefer. It's very easy to flick out. I can do the reverse flick on it. I can do the forward flick. In terms of how readily it falls shut, it just takes a little bit of encouragement and you can get it down there. But it's solid. This knife is 100% a tool. It was designed to be used. It was not designed to be flashy. And that's something that I realized, takes a very specific form that is repeated amidst other knives that are designed similarly, right? When the idea of using the knife as a tool in, a wide variety of situations, knives take a fairly similar and common form. And I've seen it in a lot. And it actually, that's why I say it shaped my preferences, because I started to specifically seek out other knives that reminded me of the Dauntless, because I couldn't get my hands on it. Anybody who's wondering, that looks oddly, similar to a knife called the Invictus. So I'll let you guys look up the history about it, because we're not talking about the Invictus today. I reviewed the Invictus Auto. That was a collaboration between Prometheus Design Works, or PDW, and ProTech. There is an original Invictus. Invictus. I'm going to mix up Invictus and Dauntless today. There is an original Invictus, and it was designed by somebody who used to work at or with TAD and doesn't anymore. That's truthfully as much information as I know. If I need to do a video at some point where I compare the two, then maybe, but right now, won't talk about it. As far as TAD, or Triple Lot Design, they do a lot of, they make a lot of tactical gear and a whole bunch of stuff. If you go to their website, it's very tactical, right? But they have, like I said, made 4 generations of this knife, and they've also collaborated to do TAD Dauntless versions of other knives. What I mean is, not necessarily other knives, I'm sorry, other makers have collaborated to do their version of the Dauntless with TAD. So, like, there's a Hinderer Dauntless. There's actually one available right now that if you're a Hinderer fan and you're okay with spending the money, it's a mid-tech, it's expensive, go get it, because they'll hold their value. And it's a tri-way version of it too. There's a Les George Dauntless. There's a Strider Dauntless, right? I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Chris Reeve Dauntless, but they are ridiculously rare. Ridiculously rare. The Dauntless itself is rare because they make it in such limited supply, but those collaborative versions, oh God, they go for insane money on the secondary market. They are very sought after by collectors. And so is this one. I couldn't even get my hands on this one, But yeah, that's what you're looking at there. So, if you want to, check out and see if your favorite knife maker has collaborated with Triple Lot Design to do a version of the Dauntless. They are very interesting, very beautiful. Oh, so fun to look at. I've wasted many hours just looking at the Dauntless collaborations. Oh my goodness. All right, guys. So we've talked about action. Let's talk about carry profile, things like that. So this version is in titanium. They do make one that is titanium and G10. That's less money. I was personally not interested in that knife. I wanted the all-tie version, which fortunately is what we're looking at here. You're looking at a little bit more thickness than a Para 3. In terms of height, up against the Para 3 and PM2, 2 knives that have awkward carry profiles that nobody ever complains about. You can see there, it is ever so slightly longer than the Para 3, shorter than the PM2, and in terms of height, it's nowhere near as tall as either of them. This knife does not have a flipper tab, making it not cumbersome at all. So yeah, no issues there. In terms of where are the calipers? In terms of blade stock thickness, I'm going to guess you're looking at probably something like 150 thousandths, maybe 145. Let's check it. Oh, no, it's less than that. Ooh, to my pleasant surprise. Okay, we're looking at about 135 thousandths. That's a really good blade stock thickness. One that's going to be thick enough to be tough enough for what you would likely put this through. Because truthfully, this is what I would define as a soldier's tool. It'll make a great EDC knife too, but yeah, this is really designed to be put through it. I know to a lot of people, it's like, well, it's a simple titanium frame lock. What could be so special about it? We'll talk about it. Yeah, absolutely. Now, weight on this guy, like I said, it's titanium, and these are not milled out on the inside. They're solid titanium scales. So it's still a big knife. It's not a massive knife, but it's big enough to where the weight's going to be not crazy, but up there. For me, it's going to be I can tell you right now, it's going to be right in the preferable range. We're looking at 5.19. So basically the same weight as a standard Hinderer XM18 with a G10 scale in the liner. Yeah, for a lot of people, that's going to kill it. It's like, I can't do that. You might need to go with the G10 version. I'm going to guess that the solid G10 scale on one side is going to bring that down by at least an ounce. I don't know though, but I don't have a problem with this. The ratios are going to be off. If you're somebody who regularly wears jeans and carries a large knife and fairly heavy knife, you're not going to have a problem with it. The carry profile is what makes it so much easier to carry than a lot of other knives that are the same weight, right? Especially with it not having a flipper tab. I wouldn't call it overly thick, overly heavy, but it's certainly not lightweight either. Let's go ahead and do the hardware check. Get out my handy dandy WIA magnetic driver and WIA bit selector, which is, well, this is the bit selector. Here it is, the magnetic driver. 2 items that are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them down in the Amazon store that I reference at the beginning of every video. Just pull up in the store and look for knife maintenance. So the pivot is a flathead, which is, you can use a coin for that, right? So no issue there. And then the handle screws are T8, which is just wonderful. There's only 2 screws, and then you've got pocket clip screws that are T6, and you got to get the bit down in there, so that might be a little bit problematic, but nah, I got no complaints with that. That is so simple. It's so easy to take apart. Oh my gosh. Field adjustment with this guy. That was the idea there, right? When Hinderer does the flathead pivot, These things are made to be taken out into the field and used. So if you have to adjust the pivot right then and there in the moment, you can use pretty much anything that will fit in that slot to adjust the pivot. And I know that a lot of people don't like how basic that pivot looks, but that's the thing. They didn't really care. It needed to be something that people could adjust on the spot. I've always appreciated that about Hinderer knives, is that I can use a penny or, you know, a flathead screwdriver to adjust it. And yeah, it's great. I just don't have an issue with that. Let's go ahead and talk about the anatomy here. So what we're looking at is tumbled titanium for the handle skills, which is just beautifully done. I absolutely love it. Chamfering in excess all the way around. It's just wonderful. The ergonomic lines on this knife are... It's everything that I knew that it was going to be. I knew that that forward choil was large enough, that it was a full forward choil, a full choke up forward choil, which means single knuckle, first knuckle, second knuckle, and third knuckle fit comfortably in there. Now, not a lot of people like that because they're like, I'm sacrificing so much cutting edge. I mean, there's not a whole lot more you can do with a knife that's got 3.5 inches of cutting edge versus 2.8 inches of cutting edge. But it is a meaningful difference in cutting edge, so it depends on your preference. For me, I'll give that up in a heartbeat for a forward choil, 100%. To be able to hold this knife here, 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 you know, I mean, I want to hold the knife where I want to hold the knife when I'm going to use it. And if I'm lacking, you know, a half inch of cutting edge to do some really oddly specific task, well, darn, I guess I'll only be able to do the other 99 tasks that I'm going to do with that knife that day, you know. So that's my mentality on that, is I just want the forward choil. It makes it so that, in this case, we have thumb studs that are in exactly the right spot, poor example, exactly the right spot to deploy the knife easily, whether you're doing the reverse flick, doing the forward flick. It's easy. This knife is properly designed to utilize those thumb studs, and the thumb studs are not in the cutting path because there's a usable forward choil there. So yeah, wonderful. The blade steel on this guy is S35V, and I have no problem with that. I've always said that on a knife that is a really nice, expensive knife like this, and this is basically a mid-tech, by the way, above high-end production. Fully US made, 100%. But on a knife that's really meant to be taken out and used, I'm going to prefer S35VN over M390. I like the stainless qualities in blades, and I like having, some decent edge retention, right? But I like a little bit more toughness. S35VN is a very preferable steel for me to go out and use and beat on. For some people, it's going to be more or less preferable, but yeah, I'm 100% okay with that. It's in the right place on a knife like this. Everything that I've seen on these knives shows a tumbled finish. I can see some lines here, some horizontal lines that suggest that possibly the finish was changed by the gentleman who owns it now, or possibly whoever owned it before him. I don't know if they actually come in this finish, as an option. Here's the thing about this, guys. Some people tell me every now and then, you should really do more research before you do some of these because you said you weren't sure about this. In some knives, it's really easy to find the history on what was or was not available on a certain knife. But let me tell you something. On these Dauntless knives, unless you're somebody who has dedicated your time to hunting down every variant of every model, it's impossible to say. As far as I can tell on the website, it shows, it shows the standard tumbled finish, right? But it also says sold out. It's not like I can go in and change things, right? And judging from pictures, it can be hard to tell because pictures look like this, right? So from far away, it's like that could be tumbled, that could be bead blasted, I don't know. As far as I can tell, tumbled is definitely an option. As far as other options, I've seen some DLC coated ones in collaboration with other knife makers. The Strider one I just looked at before the video was DLC coated. But yeah, I don't know. And even knowing that, it's not going to help a whole lot of people because basically if one becomes available, I would be tempted to jump on one of any variation if it became available and it was in, basically brand new condition. I wouldn't really care because they are so few. So that's the case here. In any case, if somebody did this finish to the blade, it looks good. I would have preferred tumbled to match the frame, but it doesn't really matter. I love the Triple Aught Design logo right there. And then on the other side, it says USA. That's great. That's great. It doesn't need anything else on there. I'm happy with that. Also love the Fuller. The Fuller makes me think of my recent XM18, the DLT Trading exclusive fullered spear. Love that. This is a spear point or drop point blade with an enormous flat that runs about 85% the length. You do have very meaningful thickness running out to the tip. Even the very tip is still pretty darn thick, so I wouldn't worry about damaging it. There's a lot of materials down here. Obviously, you don't need to be pounding it into a solid piece of concrete, but whatever, some people do that. But yeah, it's going to be just fine. Now, it does come down to an edge that is sharp. It is fairly thick behind the edge, but I'm sure that is intentional. Not every single knife needs to be designed to shave a grape. That's something that people enjoy, but you have to understand that a knife like this is meant as a tool. So in some situations, the edge is going to be put in a situation where that excess thickness, that geometry, is going to work better for the person, or in some cases, soldier, using it for something that may or may not be a knife task, right? So yeah, that's great. S35VN is a tougher stainless steel. So I think this blade shape is just about perfect for S35VN. It's not super tall. It's not super short. It's got a reasonable cutting edge that's going to cut. It's going to do what it needs to do. There's nothing in the cutting path. But gunk can get in the fuller. Then you clean it out. You know, that's just, the fuller's there. It is what it is. Thumb studs are designed great. Easy to approach them and engage them. It's easy to put away in terms of where the knife comes down. You know, the choil is going to meet your finger, so no issues there. There's no sharpness or anything up here. All of this has been nicely knocked down. Everything is just exactly as you would expect for a knife of this caliber. It's just done correctly. It's very, very straightforward. This wasn't like somebody didn't sit down and go, I'm going to draw the most attractive thing to me, or I'm going to design the most attractive thing to me, and I'm going to think nothing for the ergonomics, you know, or, you know, utility or placement of things. I'm just going to, no, that's not what happened here. What happened here is that they thought about, where am I going to place the thumb stud? Where is this person going to engage this knife in this position for using it for this task? You know, how big should we make the choil in relationship to varying sizes of people's fingers? You know, that's what I see when I look at this. This is a tool that's meant to fit so many different hands and be so versatile, right? It's simple and straightforward on purpose. Nothing on this knife was placed there just to make it look good. It was placed there because it provides some sort of benefit. I'm not going to talk about the benefits of a fuller. Considering this is a soldier's tool, I think you guys can use your imagination there. It doesn't necessarily need to be there, but you know, maybe there's a reason there that whatever. Yeah, the lines on the handles provide a little bit of traction. I mean, the lines on the scales, you know, in general are going to lock you in. The finger, especially right here. This is extremely, extremely comfortable. This is how I prefer to hold a knife when I'm doing a lot of continuous cuts straight down, right? I mean, if you're trying to make kindling for a fire, if you're processing, you know, wood for one reason or another, you're cutting through, you know, layers of cardboard, trying to break down a box or whatever, you know, I like to hold a knife like that. Back here, super comfortable. Reverse grip, super comfortable. You've got room to move around, you know, whatever. The amount of, you know, different grips here it's just excellent. It's so comfortable to hold. There's no hot spots anywhere. The jimping is meaningful. It will provide traction, not uncomfortable traction, but traction whether you are barehanded or wearing gloves. Excellent. There's a nice little scallop right here that's cut out just to be able to engage that just a little bit better. And of course, we have just minor raising there so that you can engage the lock easily. It looks ultra sharp. It's not really that sharp. I don't have a problem with that. Backspacer is awesome. Nice gear pattern backspacer. It does have traction on it. Again, not super sharp. It's just enough to sort of grip your fingers. It's got one of those lanyard bars. It's just perfect. It's just a perfect solution. It's there for people who want the lanyard, but for people who don't care, okay, it's out of the way. No big deal. You can ignore it. The pocket clip is just about perfect. It's got one of those sort of pinch bill things, so it's going to be a little difficult in some cases to get over your pants pocket. You probably could remove it and bend that up a little bit, but you'd still have the bill, which is going to catch on things. I always prefer a swoop, right? Like something like this. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. It's a deep carry clip. The screws are not recessed, and you do have to get the tool down into the pocket clip to undo the screws. It's one of those minor inconvenience things. As far as how it carries, yeah, it's perfect. Carry position of the knife is great. Carries absolutely deep carry. The retention on the clip is good, and it's titanium. This is a titanium frame lock, which means which means it locks out like this. But what I'm saying, how I should have approached that is, it does not have a steel lock bar insert. Titanium frame locks do not need steel lock bar inserts. It's something that is, it's convenient for the user and the maker. If something goes wrong with the lock geometry, it's easy to just pop the chip out, put it back in, and send it back, right? In the case of a titanium frame lock, if something goes wrong, then they have to switch out the entire lock side. But a carbonized titanium lock face with proper geometry is, in my opinion, probably better in terms of actual use than the steel lock bar insert. Why? Because it's not as slippery. Titanium, raw titanium that's been carbonized, will work harden, which means it will lock harder and harder and harder and more stable into the tang of the blade. Not lock stick. There's no lock stick here, but there's zero chance of the knife disengaging, at least by, my judgment here. This is absolutely solid, absolutely solid, and the blade is absolutely centered here. You can see the blade is centered right there, right in the middle where it should be. And it looks like this has been used, which is great because it looks like, this knife has seen, a little bit of seasoning, and it's just fine. This is one of my favorite designs that's out there. And I imagine I would like the MK4 a little bit better because it's contoured. This does not have external stops. It does have a stop that is, it's just a very large stop pin. Runs on phosphor bronze. It's full titanium. It's got just a perfect blade and a perfect choil. Ergonomics are on top, just king. Absolutely. I just love it. I mean, it's like I say about Hinder knives, it'd be better if it was contoured. Well, they have a contoured one. And it's got some texturing on the titanium. I prefer a checker pattern, but it's got texturing. This knife checks in so many boxes for me as a user, and is something that I appreciate aesthetically, right? And in terms of materials and placement of, certain things. And man, this is just one of the best freaking knives. I love it. I mean, here's the problem with it. I can gush all day, guys, but here's the problem with it. Number one, it's expensive. The G10 version of this, the G10 and titanium version goes for $300. The titanium version goes for, I think, like $425 or $430. Those prices are fair, absolutely. But here's the biggest problem. I mean, well, in my opinion, those prices are fair, considering what it costs to put something like this together in the United States, with the extra, attention to detail, the extra hand tuning, hand fitment. It's not all made by machine. That's what mid-tech means. Yeah, prices are super in line with, what you would expect, But the biggest problem is availability. You want one of these knives right now, you're going to have to hunt it down on the secondary market, and you're probably going to have to pay, you'd be lucky to pay the same thing that they ask from the site, unless it's just beat up. If it's beat up and used, maybe the person will cut you a break, but they just don't make a lot of these. They make very few of them. Right now, you can get the Tad Hinderer version of this, which is much more expensive, right? But there's a lot more that goes into that version. It's got the tri-way in it. There's some extra stuff that goes into the frame. It's a different knife. It's a compact one. It's a little bit smaller, which in a lot of ways is actually better. But yeah, I mean, that's the problem here. They're not available. Can I recommend this knife? Well, yeah. If you can get your hands on one, yeah. Can I recommend it? Is it made well? It's made darn near flawlessly. There's very little that I would change about this knife. This is one of the most perfect designs that exist. And again, I just said this the other day. I can't believe here recently how many knives I've handled that have actually changed my top 15 greatest folding knives of all time list. This one would have been on that list, 100%. This is one of, in my opinion, the top 15 greatest folding knives. It's one of the top 10 greatest folding knives that has ever existed, and it'll continue to be that way. It's the design here. This knife is made to be used. It's got everything in exactly the right place. It's made out of the right materials, and it's going to be friendly to so many different people. If I was, if crap hit the fan and I was just like launched into the wilderness or into, I guess into battle or whatever, or I was just walking down the street and I needed a knife to do something simple. There's so many things that this knife is just ready to do. It's strong. It's dependable, right? It's resilient. It's easy to carry. It's fairly compact. It's not necessarily lightweight, but it's lightweight enough that you're going to be happy that you've got the benefit of it on your person for how much it weighs. It's also fun to play with, and it makes an incredibly satisfying noise when it locks out. I love that. Love it. Oh, Tad Dauntless. Man, What a sweet piece. I love this thing. I'd love to handle an MK4 sometime. But anyways, guys, this is less a review, more of a gush fest. This will be going on my top, my most recommended knives playlist and my favorite knives of all time playlist. Thank you again, Ben J. Lion 24, for letting me take a look at this sweet guy. We'll have it back to you here shortly. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on this Metal Complex logo right here and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.